When I was in high school, my friend David and I decided that we wanted to join the school's dance class for a gym credit. He and I were both in the theater program, and we thought that one day we would be performers on the Broadway stage. But we didn't know how to dance. Now, we already had a reputation in the theater department, especially the prop room. He would emerge in a cowboy hat with spurs playing kazoo. I would follow behind him in one of many lavish dresses used in this, that, or the other musical. We were reprimanded more than once for this. No one, myself included, understood that those were early moments of gender-affirming joy for me. But anyways, we signed up for this dance class, and immediately our counselors tried to talk us out of it. They offered more traditional gym classes, or perhaps a non-exercise-based gym course like first aid if we didn't want to do traditional sports. But my friend and I persisted. And now, to get to the dance class, the dancers had to walk through the weightlifting room. And yes, the weightlifting room was mostly populated by our football team at 8 in the morning when the class started. So my friend and I danced through the weightlifting room in our tights. And yeah, we had to walk by the players, and we had to walk by the boy who had previously threatened us because we acted too effeminately. And then when we got to the class, there was just us and 3 other girls and the teacher. And the teacher took time at the beginning of class to thoroughly question us. Why were we here? Did we have a crush on one of the girls? Did we understand that this was a serious class and not a way to get away with a date? And we were thoroughly embarrassed, and we felt like we had done something wrong. So we left the class and we unenrolled, and we ended up taking first aid instead. Neither of us tried out for any of the musicals. My friend went on to work backstage on some productions, eventually going to college for it, and we went on with our lives. But I remembered this story recently because at the time, my friend and I felt as though we had done something wrong, that we had violated some rule. No one told us explicitly that we couldn't join, but the entire setup was clear. See, there was no women's football team, and there were no women playing football, and there was no men's dance team, and no men were dancing. The gender binary had unwritten laws and enforcement mechanisms that we took for granted. And those enforcement mechanisms of the gender binary have been magnified 100-fold in our modern struggle for trans people's rights. See, when we were growing up, and this was especially true if you were assigned male at birth and did not want to sign up for sports, you were often berated. You were told that sports are not about competition. They're not about winning and losing. Sports were about nobler ambitions. Sports were about learning to be part of a team. Sports were about finding the joy in moving your body. They were about learning values like persistence and grit. Now, I roll my eyes at such statements as a teenager, but now I do find these arguments compelling. And no, I don't think that organized sports is the only place that you can learn those qualities, nor do I think that our nation has a healthy relationship with sports and sporting events, even or especially even at the high school level. But all of those things about the value of sports have been thrown out the window when it relates to trans people participating in school sports. When a trans person wants to compete with their peers, with their friends, the first question is about unfair advantage and fear. It's not about teamwork or perseverance or all those noble goals. And it's not about young people learning to work with each other through difference and inclusion and joy. It's about fear. And the fear is that young cisgender women are in danger when there's a trans woman competing with them. And these fears, by the way, have plagued women's sports since the very beginning, since before women were allowed to compete in sports at all. From the first time in American history that women were able to play sports professionally, society has tried to control their bodies, and it's often under the guise of protecting them from men. Women were forced to undergo humiliating tests to ensure that they were woman enough to compete. They were forced to strip nude and be inspected by men to make sure that they were not simply men in disguise. And while the society was busy protecting women from this amorphous threat, they underfunded women's sports. They provided them with substandard salaries and stripped them of the hype and the advertising and the public education that is poured into men's sports. For instance, likely the best WNBA player in history, Carayannis, made a salary of about $230,000 last year. An NBA bench warmer who rarely plays a game makes more than $1 million a year. For Steph Curry, that $230,000 is around the year. And yet we are told that it is trans women at the high school swim meet that threatens the integrity of women's sports. Or that it's the intersex woman who grew up all of her life as a cisgender woman until she was forced to take a DNA test in order to compete because she did not look woman enough, a test that's never performed for men's sports. And these corrosive operations of the oppressive gender binary is not from sports alone. In Ohio, a transgender man needed to use the restroom, and that state has laws that says you can only use the restroom of what you were assigned at birth. So the trans man, who was assigned female at birth but had been taking testosterone such that he had a big burly beard, was forced to use the women's restroom. When he exited, he was met by several cisgender men who assumed that he was a cisgender man looking to attack women, and they beat him up. In that same state, cisgender women are being harassed and barred from using public restrooms because they are not perceived as looking feminine enough to be afforded that right. Meanwhile, I know for a fact that there are so many trans women walking into those same restrooms without incident because they do look like stuff. And the claim behind all of these laws, the claim is that they are intended to protect women from assault. And the problem with this claim is that it is simply just good old-fashioned misogyny dressed up as protection. Because either the claim is saying that there are predators who dress up like the opposite sex to trick themselves into private places to take criminal actions, or the claim is that somehow these crimes are not the result of rape culture and evil intentions by people who want to violently exert power over other people's bodies, but that these actions are somehow related at a biological level to one's chromosomes. Taking the first claim, that there are people with bad intentions trying to exploit these spaces, we never afford rights to people based on the worst actions of anyone inside or outside that group. That's just not the way rights works. We punish individual crimes. We do not remove rights based on the worst actions of one. If we did, no one would have any rights left. Well, let's think about the even more insidious claim that somehow people with XY chromosomes are in some way biologically disposed to crime, and thus the only protective measure is to have private spaces that exclude them. This is extremely dangerous logic. It's logic that fails to hold accountable men who violate other people, and it fails to hold accountable a society that continues to perpetuate a culture which allows this. It is the same principle as telling women to cover their bodies because of the misdeeds of some men. Instead of dismantling the patriarchy, they seek to ban trans people and anyone who does not fit the beauty standards demanded by the gender binary. It's as George Takei, and I always say his name wrong, as George Takei says, it was never about bathrooms, like it was never about water fountains. It's about establishing control of people's bodies. And the rise in these anti-trans laws often track very closely with anti-abortion laws, because the establishment and maintenance of the gender binary has always been one of control of women's bodies. For instance, Florida schools made it mandatory to question young women athletes regarding their menstrual cycles, a violation of privacy intended to ferret out trans women and potentially track the use of contraceptives. And this is not some distant danger that here in the Northeast we have escaped. At school board meetings across New Jersey, anti-trans protesters are demanding that school boards violate the state law and forcibly out trans students to their parents. And some of these school boards have agreed. These meetings have become violent, and LGBTQIA parents, students, and teachers have reported assault and bullying as a result. The New Jersey Attorney General has filed lawsuits against at least 3 of these schools to bar these rules from going into effect. Even here in Bergen County, there are therapists who specialize in the most recent iteration of conversion therapy aimed at deprogramming trans people. But what is the danger that we're talking about? Is all of this just about a small minority of people fighting for their rights to live a whole and complete life? And I think if that was true, the fight would be worth it even if it was not true, but I just don't believe that that is the case. The slogan, trans rights are human rights, is not meant to create a special carve-out for trans people to have additional rights. Much like Black Lives Matter does not mean that other lives do not have value. It means that our society acts in such a way that Black lives are cut short with impunity in ways that other lives are not. Trans rights are human rights means lifting up those rights that cisgender people have, and maybe you don't even think about because they are not an active part of their lives. Mary Walker, the woman we learned about in our meditation and our reading, she fought for the right for women to wear trousers. She fought for the right for women to practice medicine. She fought for the right for women to have dignified jobs, to be evaluated by their merit, to contribute to healing a moving nation with pride. The right to wear what we want, the right to express our individuality in whatever way we please, is not a right that is unique to trans people. It is a right that every single one of us possesses, and that too many want to strip away from people because they do not conform to a gender which was imposed upon them by a doctor and a society at the time they were born. My friend and I wanting to join a dance class was not about a trans woman's rights to find exercise that spoke to her self-expression. It was about children attempting to avail themselves of the right to learn artistic expression, to feel their bodies changed through practice, physical exertion, to learn about the value of teamwork and determination. And those are rights for everyone, and not just people who conform to someone else's standard of what their body should look like. The right to use a bathroom means the right to live a public life. The right to marry who we want means the right to build our families the way that our families choose to love, and not the way that 2-bit biologists want to pretend a family should look. Trans rights are human rights because trans rights are about our fundamental relationship to self-expression and public life. Now we know that the fight against trans rights, at least in part, has been perpetuated by particular religious organizations who want to claim a monopoly on religious or spiritual life in America. These institutions want us to believe that religion or spirituality means conforming to a particular version of what makes a man, and what makes a woman, and what makes a family. We know that these visions have been tied to white supremacy culture and colonialism. So as you use as liberal religion, as humanist societies, I believe that we stand firm in our opposition to this supposed monopoly and this sham moral panic. And I believe that we show not only our trans or our gay or our lesbian siblings that we hold a spiritual and religious space that is wide enough that it can hold them in its arms. I believe we show to ourselves and to the world. The fight against trans rights is one of the major civil rights challenges of our time. It is a fight not just for us, not just for trans people who do not alone have the votes or the voice to preserve our rights and our lives, but for every single one of us who value the right to bodily autonomy, to expression, and to love. And it is so important now, more than ever, that we as UU stand united against this corrosive hate that is eating the heart of our country, both nationally and in our local communities. We need to use our voices, and we need to use our moral authority as religious, spiritual, and humanist communities to stand with and lift those who are vulnerable to these attacks. This is not a fight that we can afford. This is good. And with that, let us rise as we are really able to sing together as we invest ourselves again in a fight for us all to be free.